It is more than 3 years now that the Article 370 constitutional provision that gave a special status to Jammu and Kashmir was abrogated by the Union government, and this decision was declared on August 5th, 2019, and subsequently, as we all know now, that the state was bifurcated into the Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, with the provision of having a legislative assembly for the former, which is Jammu and Kashmir. Soon after the government took the decision, it said that the aim of this historic declaration was aimed at ushering in development for the region, which has faced the brunt of terrorism for decades, and also for integrating it into the mainstream of India. How do you analyze the situation now in 2022, Mr. Sinha?
As you have very well stated that after the abrogation of Article 370 and Article 35A, the process of integration of Jammu and Kashmir began in the right earnest. So earlier, if I may take it back, at the abrogation phase, there was no accountability to the funds that were sanctioned by the center from time to time. If you look at the history of Jammu and Kashmir post-independence, New Delhi has been giving out money like anything. Every time we spent money, it was lining the pockets of few politicians, the dynasts over there and their cronies. But the ground reality was not changing. What happened after the abrogation of Article 370 and Article 35A is that the accountability set in and DAG could audit all those funds that were sanctioned. The democracy seeped right at the panchayat level. So the empowerment of the common Kashmiri, common people across Jammu and Kashmir happened. And that is why we see a spree of development. I mean, roads are being constructed, power generation has almost doubled, and the target for tripling the power generation distribution has improved substantially. 53 projects in various sectors of road, power, health. All these things are being undertaken at a rapid pace. If I may read out a couple of data points that will give our listeners some understanding as to how much development is being carried out. So around 5,000 crores has been spent for power transmission, and this power generation capacity has almost tripled over the last 3 years. And there are plans that this will triple over the next 7 years as well. So at the present time, 3,500 megawatt electricity is being generated. Then if I talk about the medical colleges, the nursing colleges, seats have doubled, the colleges have increased. So you have roads being constructed at a very rapid pace. Tunnels are being constructed. So all these, I mean, each of these segments, any parameter of development, if you pick, there will be n number of data points to show how things have drastically improved over the last 3 years since the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A. So this personal fiefdom, when it stopped and the crony appeasement has stopped, so the funds being sent out from the center is being utilized in a proper manner.
The situation in Jammu and Kashmir, whether this is regarding public affairs, economic or political or any other such indices, this is by default somehow seen from the prism of security also. As we all know that the region also shares very volatile borders with Pakistan, with the Ladakh region now has a border with China. Only yesterday, on Thursday, Union Home Minister Amit Shah reviewed the security situation in Jammu and Kashmir with the Lieutenant Governor of the Union Territory, senior officials of the UT government and from the center at the Home Ministry. And he also directed them to continue their efforts of wiping out terrorism from the area through a coordinated action where different multiple security agencies are involved. Now, we know that the infiltration of terrorists keeps the agencies involved. And also at the same time, data shows that the incidents of stone pelting have come down to a negligible zero. The killing of terrorists has also been very high. But also at the same time, the recent spate of killings of the locals and Kashmiri Pandits is a big cause of concern. Your take, Mr. Sinha, on this?
We are progressing. The state of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir is progressing. The development projects are taking up. But at the same time, we must realize that Pakistan has not given up its nefarious design. So they are still planning, they're still trying to disturb the calm and serenity in Jammu and Kashmir. So they are trying to infiltrate their terrorists, or they are trying to rope in some disgruntled youth from the valley into the stone pelting incidents or into working for them as overground workers or as conduits for foreign trained terrorists. So all these things are going to happen. What seeds were sown in 2019 are being reaped at this point of time. So again, as you rightly mentioned, the number of terrorist killing has increased, the number of infiltration has decreased, but it hasn't stopped altogether. So these steps that are being taken by the Home Minister Amit Shah and state government officials, the intelligence officials, these needs to be taken in the right earnest, and the overground network which still exists, the terrorist overground network, this needs to be dismantled. And this is what probably Home Minister Amit Shah was trying to figure out and trying to eliminate when he conducted this meeting. So we'll have to understand this from a perspective that to bring a full stop to terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, we have to understand the mindset of the Pakistanis. And of course, we need to invest and look at the scenario in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan as well. Because as we talk about development happening on this side of the Kashmir, Pakistan-occupied Kashmir has been in turmoil over the last couple of months. There have been protests at a very, very massive scale. Price has been rising and there has been disgruntlement due to high-handedness of the Pakistan army. So it is very easy for the Pakistanis to rope in Kashmiris from POK and blame the entire scenario over there onto India and make them infiltrate to our side and let them some kind of a terrorist activity. So fallout of it is we have to see in terms of how we are dealing with this issue in totality. I mean, there cannot be a piecemeal approach that yes, this is the Kashmir Valley on our side, on the Indian side, and we only look at it in isolation. So when the Home Minister and all the officials have discussed these issues, I'm sure they must have looked at the perspective in POK and Gilgit-Baltistan as well, because enough turmoil is going on over there which has the potential to disturb the peace and development process over here.
All these development initiatives that were taken post-August 2019 somehow will also lead to the electoral process in the UT. And as the government has said that once there are elections, there can also be a thought about reverting the status of the UT to a full-fledged state again. And now this is widely anticipated that the elections in the UT, Jammu and Kashmir would be held later this year or could be early next year. Also very recently, the Chief Electoral Officer of the UT has declared about the publishing of the final electoral rolls, the purity of the rolls exercise that the Election Commission undertakes. Now, Mr. do you think that this is a step, these development initiatives are a step in that direction? Is it a good time to hold polls in Jammu and Kashmir?
It's good to still wait for another couple of months. This is something which the Election Commission will decide. I can always think about in terms of empowering the average Kashmiri or the average citizen in Jammu and Kashmir. So average Jammu and Kashmiri is empowered at this point of time. See, earlier when Article 370 and 35A were there, a couple of politician families used to rule the roost over there. And their cronies used to get tickets and they used to become the ministers and they used to siphon away all the funds that were being sent out from the center to various developmental schemes. This was a stop. And we also held the district elections, the panchayat elections, they were held very successfully. So already the democratic process has seeped in at the lowest level, at the grassroots level. Now the process has to be widened. And India being the largest democracy and a very vibrant democracy, we always have this methodology of electing the government rather than while earlier the process was that a few politician families, they ran their political organizations like a private limited company. So now this apparatus has been broken. Now the security situation is strengthened. It's still being strengthened, further being strengthened by the visit of the Home Minister and by the various initiatives that are being taken at the security front. The development has already happened over there. People have seen what havoc Article 370 and 35A did to their place, and they had to grapple with all the basic necessities of life. So I think at the outset, this is the right time to conduct elections, but still, I will say that when to hold the decision, this is entirely a prerogative of the Election Commission of India, and they will figure out. But the process is, as you rightly said, the process has been set and this could be followed further.
With regard to the development initiatives, now this works to empower the citizens, the electorate, and also the political activity in the region. This may be Jammu and Kashmir or any other place. So how do you see the overall gamut of connecting development, peace and security, and then ushering into the most important thing that is relevant to a democracy is the electoral process? Your final comments?
Earlier, when you used to travel into the Kashmir Valley, there were serious infrastructural concerns, like roads were in a dilapidated state, electricity supply was erratic, water supply was very erratic. There was hardly any healthcare setup over there, education system. Anything and everything was in shambles over there. And there were funds allocated for all these infrastructural issues, for all these development projects. Everything was done on paper. Nothing was used to happen on the ground. But now things have started moving on the ground. When in 2019, when Article 370 was abrogated, a couple of politicians said that there will be rivers of blood and all of those kind of provocative comments were made. Nothing of that sort has happened. Rather, we are talking about development. We can go about talking about the crores and crores of development projects that are happening. Bridges are being constructed. Tunnels are being constructed over there. Roads are being laid out. Average kilometers road being laid out on a daily basis has increased from over the last 3 years, increased drastically. The healthcare setup has improved. So what does a common man want? Basic necessity of a common man is again roti, kapda and makan, food, clothing and shelter, and all these things are being taken care of. When the security scenario is being improved, the development projects are being improved, there is no stopping for the electoral process to go ahead.
Right. Thank you very much for sharing your points, Mr. Sinha.